That's a case, Billy Ocean, about the old boy with the cane stick. Let my slippers at the function. It's hard to run the Gucci size chick. I bet you say you didn't have a husband. I'm a stud, no Jackie Chan, no travel. Can't clean it with the beat. Blood dripping from the cutthroat. No love, not me. I can never be the one you want to step for. Money, money, the machine. Spit the bit, I got my stuff. RIP the times that I was broke. That's it like a 9/11 folks. Mad back, lick it clean. There's precious in it, I'm a local. Cooking up canard. Waiting for the antidote. Running out of time. Patience in it, independent hope. My question is, when I tell you, get over here. He's gonna get this. One in the hand, one in the bag, up. One in the hand, one in the bag, up. Look at the cash, look at the cash bubbling. Look at the cash, bubbling. One in the hand, one in the hand, one in the hand, one in the bag, up. Look at the cash, look at the cash bubbling. Look at the cash, bubbling.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today. Thank you to everyone to coming. My name is Kimmy Bell, and on behalf of Vans, I really thank you for attending our first of 3 virtual events this week with Nordstrom, and a big thank you for Nordstrom for hosting us and for hosting these wonderful art activations. We will be holding virtual events with Nordstrom every day this week with artists sharing their passion for inspiring creative expression and individuality around the world. We will get right into this panel, but we will leave 15 minutes at the end of the panel in order to answer a few questions. There's a Q&A area down at the bottom. We'd love for you guys to write out your questions during the panel as you have them, and we will address them towards the end, as many as we can fit in. Right now, I would love to introduce our moderator, who will lead this inspiring discussion, activist and creative strategist, Louis Calderon. Louis, with a career focused in the intersection of youth, culture, and politics, has built campaigns that have ignited conversations and shifted cultural narratives. I met him first time when he was running the youth vote for Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. In this role, he was responsible for shaping some of the campaign's most memorable moments. He has also worked on Rock the Vote at QX Institute and other brands and organizations, as well as a marketing creative on his own with his own agency. An Afro-Latino dad, DJ, snowboarder, runner, veteran, happy Veterans Day, strategist, activist, curator, friend, and dreamer of dreams. I will lend it to you. Thank you so much, Louis, for hosting us. And at that point, I will mute. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kimmy. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm super excited to be leading this inspiring discussion today on the intersection of art and activism. I'm eager to chat with this amazing panel of artists, including Phil America, Sydney James, Christopher Martin, and Shireen Damra. We'll be talking about how their work has been a tool for them as activists to amplify marginalized voices, visualize a better world, and ignite conversations in their local communities and beyond. And this is happening today with support from our good friends at Nordstrom and Vans, who encourage inspiring creative expression. I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Phil America. Phil is a LA-based artist, activist, and designer. He uses installation, design, photo, video, and other mediums to create works generally focused on issues of race, class, gender, sexuality, and species. Phil has helped in the development of Dear Burma, a free school for migrants. He hosts a class for students affected by the prison system at Los Angeles High School of the Arts as part of POP's organization. Help me welcome Phil. Next, I'd like to welcome Sydney James. Detroit bred and based visual artist and muralist Sydney G. James began her career as an art director in advertising. Returning to Detroit in 2011, Sydney has become a leading creative voice in Southeast Michigan, exploring themes of the racial and gender positioning of the Black woman in America as last or least among others in society. This has been the central theme in Sydney's work. Her portraits and murals seek to reposition this narrative of the Black woman's visibility and importance, bringing them to the forefront of the conversation. Sydney's art expands figurative paintings with bold brushwork, colors, and imagery. Welcome, Sydney. Our next panelist is Christopher Martin. Christopher is a multimedia and tattoo artist from North Carolina and is currently working in Oakland and San Francisco. Through his art, Martin tells the story of a young man coming from the South. He is prone to create hand-cut and sewn banners with iconographic logo designs that tell a story relevant to his own culture and history that are representative of the modern day experience of the African diaspora. And finally, please help me welcome Shireen Damra. Shireen is a Palestinian American designer and illustrator based in Chicago. She uses her passion for social justice and healing to imagine and create new possibilities in her art and in her communities. Growing up in a working class Palestinian refugee family, Shireen has a sense of what injustice and racism looked like early on. As she got older, she started learning and understanding more about how structural oppression functions and the interconnectedness between struggles of many different marginalized communities. She took her knowledge and put it into actively challenging systemic oppression through years of organizing and now more distinctively through her illustration and design. I'm super excited to get into this conversation with you all today, and thanks for taking the time to join us. So why don't we'll just begin? Let's just hop right in. The first question, and I'll direct it to you, Phil. What inspired you to use your art as a platform for activism? Was it always ingrained in your practice, or was there a certain moment that flipped a switch and made you want to create with an activist sort of point of view?
Well, I mean, first I would say I'm inspired still to this day by a lot of the same things that inspired me from the beginning. And it's like folks like who are on this panel and other artists who use their voice to speak up and speak out and amplify other voices that are marginalized. And for me, activism is the same as art, where it's just a tool to speak louder and speak truth to power and speak up for the folks who need to be spoken up for. So I look at art as simply a language, and if I could make music, I would make music. If I could do something else, I would do something else. And art just happens to be the way that I feel I can reach the most people. So that's what I do.
And I'll pose the same question to you, Sydney.
Anger was my illustrator. Advertising. I did ghost work for television. And then 2015 kind of changed. I think it kind of changed everybody's life. You know, like you had the Sandra Bland. But for me, it wasn't just Sandra Bland. It was a video that I watched way too late in the day. It was right before I went to bed, of a young woman getting attacked by a cop down in Texas at a pool party. Like he had his knee in her back. He was pulling her braids in a very dominant position. And it wasn't just what was happening to her that really inspired me, if you will, because I feel like that word is like kind of wrong to use, to be inspired by such terrible stuff. It was the people standing around doing nothing. And that was like also around the time of the Say Her Name movement. And I just kind of hopped on that bandwagon because if nobody's gonna be speaking for us, we gotta speak for us. And so that's when, but also like Faye Ringgold, like she was not the first time I've heard that quote, like an artist's responsibility is to tell the truths of the time. I heard it from Harry Belafonte and Nina Simone, because I honestly feel like to be born Black in this country and to be an artist, we're kind of inherently, it might even be our duty. Like we don't have the luxury of just painting to be painting pretty. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's my personal take on it.
Thanks. And what about you, Christopher?
Well, personally, I feel growing up in North Carolina, it was the moment when I finally had moved away to Oakland and experiencing a place that is so rich and deep in activism and just having that empowerment of Black voices, Black figures. It was just like, it was something I had never experienced in the South. And if you did experience it, it was in certain pockets of the South. So I feel like when I finally had removed myself from that, when I finally graduated from an HBCU and taking in that experience and then graduating and then leaving for Oakland, I felt like in that time where I was away, when I had time to meditate and reflect on these experiences that had happened in the South, that's when I truly came um, with the voice to create these images based around those experiences. And it's not like I sought out to be an activist by any means. I just wanted to display my experiences. And if other people resonate with that, then that's awesome. But I'm just trying to shed light to a personal story of a Black man in America. I can't tell the story of anybody else. Like, this is what the life that I live through this lens. So just like being in Oakland is just like, they're so about it and so inspiring in activism. And I feel like just being in this environment has amplified and like juiced me to like really like show out. Like, I show out for my community. I show out for the younger generation who is going to come after me. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with how I've come to create this body of work today.
Cool. And how about you, Shireen?
Yeah, so my journey as an artist isn't super linear. I've loved art since I was a child and have drawn and painted since I was a kid. But I've been doing it on and off as a hobby for many years. During and after college, I really dove into the world of social justice organizing. And organizing became like my entire life, and I put all my energy into it. But as years passed by, I dove deeper into the work. I found myself neglecting the artistic side. And a few years into it, I reached a turning point in my life. I started getting burnt out because the work is very heavy. It's not like lighthearted to do this work. I think Sydney mentioned 2015 as a turning point year. It was actually a turning point for me personally too. I was diagnosed with cancer that year, so whether or not I liked it, it forced me to stop my work and take a pause so I could take care of my health, do surgery, radiation treatments, all that. During the time away from organizing, I thought about how art was like very much missing in my life and in my work. And so that's at that point, I promised myself like I'm gonna make sure to incorporate it into my work. Instead of keeping art and activism as separate worlds, I decided to find ways to bring it together and use art as a tool of activism and healing, and to bring people together. Because I think Phil said like art is its own language and it could definitely touch people in ways that words simply can't. So I started to use art in that way. So here I am.
Here you are. Well, welcome. And thanks for everyone for giving us that context. I mean, I think it's such an amazing time for activists and artists and artivists to express themselves and to be able to use their medium and their art as ways, as tools to fight the good fight on a daily basis, you know. And but I'm really like I'm curious about some of the art that like for Christopher, your art seems to be is tattoo, classically tattoo inspired art, right? So you have a long history of tattoo art, sailor-ish kind of art, that then you've woven all of these themes into. Is that right?
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
understanding your work that way
Oh,
correctly?
yes, 100%. Yeah, a lot of my artwork is inspired by Americana tattoo images and just how bold and simple that is. It just really resonated from graduating and having this degree within graphic design. So how to make lines work with the less lines and creating the same images is what really resonates with me. And also just the connection between the African diaspora and also naval ideology, and just really diving into this surreal story of the passage over water and the images connected to those. Um, Very much like a part of my work. And also just being a Black tattoo artist in an industry that is um, primarily occupied by white males, just putting on tattoos, just working in that industry is activism in itself, showing up.
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah, like just Black people showing up is activism, like, and just living our best lives and showing that we can perform at the level that other people, other gatekeepers have denied us at. That's my personal form of activism, and that's just what like really like lights the fire for me, to be honest. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think maybe we'll just use this this period here to talk about your, because you all have such different styles of your work, and so can we talk about, let's go around and talk about your particular or current formats and the mediums by which you use, and how activism has influenced the work that you've done and the platforms that you are working within. So Sydney, for example, like you're a muralist, you've done gigantic pieces all over Detroit primarily, yes?
All over the world.
All over the world, sorry, yeah.
I have a wall in Nepal. Who's been
beautiful.
to Nepal? But yeah, like it's like you said, and if you think that it's rare for Black men, the art world is racist, but it's even more sexist than racist. So, and I have all of the components. So literally my presence in these spaces is activism in itself. But my first piece I did was 2015, 2016, Murals in a Market. I painted a woman holding a protest sign, and the protest sign reads a friend of mine's poem that she actually performs. And it's simple. She gets up on stage and she says, "Hi, my name. I'm going to recite to you my poem, the definitive list of everything that would keep you safe as a Black being. Woman is crossed out though on my piece, being in America, and the list is blank." So she stays silent as long as she can. I think her record might be 3.5 minutes. And then she says, "Thank you," and she exits the stage. The interesting thing about that is, it's clearly like kind of activist, right? Like I'm putting it out there. There's literally nothing that can keep Black people safe in America. And even more nothing to keep a Black woman safe in America, right? The interesting thing is when other people see it, white, especially like white men who might not even have like real Black interactions. I think it was S.C. Johnson did like a retreat here. And they hired Kashink. They flew in Kashink from Paris to teach these people how to use spray cans as their group activity, right? And then they go around Easter Market to get in that education on murals. And I was invited to come to dinner with these people. And oh yeah, we saw some murals. Which one was yours? And I said, "Oh, it's the woman holding the protest sign." "Oh yeah, I saw that one. The list was blank." Laughed his ass off with like three of his colleagues. I had to leave. I had to go because our reality, people really think it's a work of fiction, and it blows my mind. But that's, so that would be the viewer, like one of the viewer components. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because you put it out there, that doesn't mean everybody's going to engage with it with the intent of how it was supposed to be engaged. It's crazy out here. Great.
Yeah. Phil, what about you? I mean, you have such a rich history of doing such diverse installations, and tell us a little bit about.
I mean, first I would just echo what Sydney said, that I think that we, especially being the only white person on this panel and only, white man on this panel, white men need to do a better job of protecting Black women in this country, or Black folks who identify as a female in this country, because, they're under attack at every step of the way, when they walk outside their door and even when they're at home. So first and foremost, I think anybody who's white out there listening to this, especially white men, we need to do a better job. And in terms of my own work, like my work, the medium is generally the message and the vehicle in which I use to convey what it is I want to say. So if it ends up being a t-shirt, if it ends up being an installation in public space, or if it ends up being a sound installation in a museum or a painting, I will approach it. I will approach the medium with which I want to say what I want to say. So if the best way I can convey it is by making a t-shirt, that's what I'll do. And so, I've done work where I've, gathered clothing from folks who were crossing the border into the US without permission directly after the current guy was put in office. And I, cut those up. I had a clothing exchange where I exchanged new clothes for their old clothes, and then started to cut them up and make American flags. And then I framed them and put them on the US-Mexican border wall. And, that becomes an installation in itself, but it's something that nobody sees. But, I use social media, or I use the media to reach folks. But then there's other things that are just simply in public space, given, like, for example, getting a flag, LGBTQ plus flag that we designed up on the state capitol for the first time in California. So, I end up using art just simply as the best way to say things sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't even become art. Sometimes the best way is just, from behind the scenes supporting somebody else, or working in a completely different space other than the art world. And art for me is just very simply a vehicle to convey what I want to say, ask the questions I want to ask. And, I think that's similar to a lot of the other artists who work in activism, that I see a similar theme where they're an activist first and then an artist second, and they use art just simply as the way to say things. You look at Patrisse Cullors or Ai Weiwei or Theaster Gates or any of these folks, and I'm sure a lot of the folks on this panel, art just becomes a way that we can reach other people that we couldn't if we only spoke in one language. And I speak numerous languages fluently, and it's still, there's thousands and thousands of languages in this world, and there's no way I can speak them all. So
Maybe 3 worse English than that.
what's that?
I speak 3 languages: English, bad English, and worse English.
And
All right.
art, and art, and art.
And art, yeah.
4 languages.
So and probably body language a little bit, and sarcasm. Yeah.
Sarcasm is definitely a language on all of its own.
Oh, then yeah, 5 strongly.
And thanks, Phil. Shireen, and yourself, because one thing I've loved all of your work. Following you recently on Instagram, and having myself done. I just came off of a project with an organization that we used a lot of illustrations that were designed to get people to think about current issues and voter registration and whatnot. The idea of making design artwork that's designed specifically to live on social, to be delivered through social platforms. A lot of your design work is, it's very easily shareable, and it's become pieces that people are like, oh man, that's perfect. I'll use this to share how I feel right now. I mean, was that an intention when you design? Do you build specifically for the platform, or can you talk us through your work and the process and how it all lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that was my original intention. I started drawing just, pencil, paper, paints, and things like that. I was very traditional art up until maybe 2-3 years ago. A friend of mine gifted me like a tablet. So I had like a stylus pen, a tablet. I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. I wasn't used to it. So then I started looking at online tutorials, how do you do digital illustration, stuff like that. So I kind of taught myself how to do it in a different way. And I started my Instagram account about 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago, and started posting some of my experiments on there. So I didn't do it initially, but now I'm seeing, how impactful it could be, because the digital sphere has become a lot more prevalent, especially since the pandemic. It's become such a key way to share art, outside of like street art exhibits, during the pandemic, when digitally connecting has become like the standard. And also kind of opens a way to reach more marginalized communities that kind of need art in this moment. And it's a time where everyone's on their phones and like paying attention more too. So it's kind of a different world right now than it was, 2 years ago or a year ago. So like right now, I'm definitely using that. And I'm using sort of imagery that like, I use a lot of bright colors, a lot of florals, a lot of like greenery, because to me those are sorts of my ways of trying to envision a better world too, and not just recreating the systems of oppression. I try to like intentionally not recreate those, not to ignore them, but when I do include them, like when I include handcuffs or tanks or apartheid walls, I'm always putting someone breaking those, like breaking chains or breaking through an apartheid wall, because I think it's really important not to keep recreating the systems of oppression, but envisioning something better in a world we want to do, like live in, because I feel like as activists, we often organize around things we don't want. And that's really important. Like we don't want to see people in ICE detention centers. We don't want to see Black people killed on a daily basis by police. We don't want to see Palestinians and indigenous people continuously losing their land. But we organize around these things all the time. But I think the missing piece has been envisioning the world we do want to see. I think like having that sort of digital platform kind of helps us find a way to sort of promote those better visions of the world that we want to see.
I also noticed that in your work, you in some of the pieces you'll offer the piece will come in like 2 or 3 different color variations as well. Like it when you, I mean, like and this will segue into sort of like we'll talk about social platforms and design or art in those spaces, but like when you which I think I really appreciate the fact that you make a piece and then you make 3 color variations of it, which is really amazing. Do you find that like, have you gone in and seen that, people will share one color way more than others?
Yeah, I just recently started doing multiple colors because I was doing a little bit of research on like accessibility and like seeing that, there's a lot of people who are colorblind and can't see certain colors and could see others. So like, I wanted to give options to people who resonate with more colors than others, because sometimes, I could see something super colorful and it might look good to me, but someone else might see it in black and white and not see the shades or the colors. So I wanted to create a way that was more accessible.
That's cool. Well, let's look at this. We'll segue right into sort of these times and these platforms, the social platforms. We'll jump around the questions a little bit here, but social platforms like Instagram have made sharing your art easy to do and have become a primary space for political conversations to take place. How have you as artists navigated the relationships between your work, nurturing your audience via social, and managing opposing viewpoints on your platforms? Sydney, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, Instagram before it got bought off bought up by Facebook was my favorite platform, just because pictures. I think artists just like nothing but pictures. It was a dream, right? Mm-hmm. I love sharing and connecting with other artists like across the world. I think that's the dopest thing about social media, and you get new supporters from all over. But how it connects to like art and activism for me, which is what I found out during this pandemic. The first 3 months of this pandemic, I'm sure like many people, I really was stuck on my couch. I was grieving, I was coping, whatever. And then after just clearly open season on Black people was not going to end. I read an article, a dated article that was about the Malice Green case. If you're not familiar, he was killed here in Detroit by 2 off-duty cops in 1992. I was 13 years old. There was a mural painted at the scene where he was murdered. It was still blood on the street when Benny White Jr. painted this mural on the side of a party store. I read this article and it was about that case, because what was special about the case was we actually did get a conviction. Not the conviction we deserved, but we got a conviction. But at the end of the article, it made mention that the original mural was demolished against community's wishes. Like, it was small enough that they could have preserved it, but they didn't. They literally destroyed the whole building. And I woke up and I said, oh, I gotta recreate a Malice Green mural, right? And the next day I put it out there on social media. Hey guys, what do you think about me recreating the Malice Green mural? I'm thinking about doing it, but what do you guys think? And I threw up a sketch. It was Malice Green, not as a man, because I also don't paint men. I paint nothing but Black women, right? I made that decision in 2015. But I painted him and I designed him as a sculpture, like a statue. And he's holding a scroll. And this is just my sketch. And the scroll contained the names in my head at the time. It was gonna be the names of people murdered by police from the year I was born, 1979, all the way to 2020. I got 771 likes and all of the support in the comments. I said, okay, I'm gonna put up a GoFundMe tomorrow. I put up the GoFundMe with all the details, detailing everything I needed to make it work. $10,000 is what I asked for. I raised $10,000 in 2.5 hours to paint the mural. I raised $18,000 by the next day. So I turned it off because I did need a little extra, but that was just doing too much, because my intent was I did not take any money from the funding. I was really just paying off equipment, paying for insurance, all this other stuff, right? But that shows you the power of social media. Also, the power of social media is, there is no database really showing how many people police have actually killed and not been accounted for in this country. Over 1,000 names ended up being on my wall, and that's only about 3 years worth of names. 2014 to 2015 mostly. Many of the names up there were under the age of 18, victims under the age of 18. And if you were, trans, queer, anything in between, your case wasn't even investigated, and your mama and daddy probably didn't even search for you. Like, it was, but the power of social media is I got it done. And then I got it out there. The sad thing about it is, like, literally, so that process from my idea to fruition was 7 days total. I earned the money, I started working immediately. On that 8th day, the scroll was already outdated.
Right.
By at least 5 or 6 people that had been just taken out that week by cops. Because, that's when, like, the protesting was really at the forefront, because that was right after George Floyd. And so social media, it helps. And fighting off the opposing, because I did get some opposing things, like when other people, not on my page proper, but when other entities have shared my work, that's when you get the, like, oh, he was a drug dealer, he was a crackhead, he was a, all those things, those words, those, when they, gotta throw all the salt on the victim just to get people comfortable with somebody getting murdered. And people have no, like, even if he was all those things, and I know he wasn't, because the family caught up with me. They reached out to me, and I got to know this man. He had bought a bag of weed. They were just harassing him, and apparently they had been casing this joint like they were the cops of the neighborhood for over a decade, harassing these kids, then adults, and then you murder. And it's the same story over and over and over again. And honestly, I have to ignore the opposing comments, because I don't want to fight you with my words. I want to fight you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to throw real hands. I don't want to throw Twitter finger hands. on a box, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, like,
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, that's, I get, so that's what I guess the comment section is a part of this relationship, right? Like, so Sydney, you described just basically just, I have an idea, I go to the universe, we get the support, like here are the tools, click, click, clack, boom, it's happening, 7 days, we're in it. We have removed institutions, approval,
yep,
a system of the gatekeepers. There are, so now we have
yep.
no gatekeepers, but there's a tax to pay in that
Oh yeah,
it can be in that comment section, right? And
yep.
and what takes place there. Curious what that experience has been like for you, Phil. Social as a platform and your relationship with it and your audience relative to the work that you've done.
I mean, there's a lot of people in the comments always everywhere, I feel like, and I just try to completely ignore it, to be honest. I mean, I feel like you've got, social media is just super performative and it just ends up being performance art, in my opinion, oftentimes. And, you look at what Shireen is doing and you can see that her work is her work and social media is just one of the outlets she uses to like put the work out there. And so for me, that's all social media is. And I'm actually, I would say, bad at it and scared of it at the same time. I mean, I was arrested the first time protesting in '99 in Seattle, and from that point till now, I've seen so many ways in which the U.S. government, local police stations have used, or local police departments have used social media, have used the internet, have used cell phones to build cases against people, including myself. Had phone taps, had, all of those things, had my social media subpoenaed and opened in court in the past, not Instagram, but other social media outlets. So for me, I'm to be honest, I'm very scared of it. And I use it very, very modestly and simply just to kind of say what it is that I want to say, or just like more amplify the work that I'm already doing or work that other people are doing. But beyond that, I try to not get too involved. I mean, you end up arguing with some fucking kid in the Midwest who has nothing better to do other than be a troll, and that person probably isn't worth the time I'm spending arguing with them when I could be putting that energy into supporting something that I actually do care about, or getting behind somebody that I actually do want to support. So I mean, not to completely rag on social media, because I do think it's a good tool, but for me, it's I don't understand it enough to have too much of an opinion on it.
And how about yourself, Shireen? I mean, what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I agree with what a lot of Sydney and Phil said. Basically, I'm using social media to push causes, and I get very uncomfortable about showing a lot about myself and my personal life. I use it mostly to house my art. I used to be a little bit more personal with it when I had like a few hundred followers, but now that I have a lot more followers, I'm very like mum about my personal life. I use it just for the art and kind of using my art to push certain causes. Because I think like for me in this account that I use on social media, I don't just create art for art's sake now. I use it to like basically inspire people to take action. So like with every piece that I create, I make sure that that I do a lot of research behind it first, that I'm in conversations with people involved in that particular issue if I'm not already involved, and like providing the best information and action items possible, so that when people don't just share the art, they also like sign a petition, make calls, take some other action, donate, because I think my issue is I think like a lot of people are there for the aesthetics and they don't often take that next step. And so a lot of my work on social media is just trying to get people to take that next step, because I want to make sure folks are committed to the ongoing work for long-term social change after the hashtags become less popular, because that's not what it's all about. Because things are popular one day and then they're not the next, but like the systemic injustices are there. And so like I think people need to like be aware of that and commit to that ongoing work. And as far as like my own experience, like again, I've done 10 years of offline activism before I did the online stuff. So like I'm very well versed with community building in person. It is a different game and it's harder like digitally. But there are a lot of pros and cons. Like pros are like, you know, I've built with a lot of amazing artists around the world. We're kind of creating, some of us are in the process of possibly creating like a collective of artists that are kind of doing in similar spots where we're in this new reality where we're just like doing online activism a lot, which is not what we're used to. So yeah, building those relationships are new. I've connected with families of Ahmaud Arbery and Matthew Rushin, Elijah McClain, to sort of create stuff to help them get the signatures they need and the calls that they need for their campaigns as well. But yeah, there's a lot of cons, like a lot of nasty comments, very hurtful to their families, they're racist. So for me, a lot of the time I was spending in the beginning deleting a lot of things because I don't want people to see those comments and become even more traumatized, especially Black folks who have, you know, already mourning these things, like having to come and see these really nasty comments. So like I kind of spent a lot of time, and I still spend a lot of time deleting comments that so that people don't have to see these negative like reactions when they see them. But for the most part, I've gotten positive reactions, thankfully. And I think like, yeah, I think like a lot of people like, I think looking at the analytics, I'm not very like well versed in social media, but looking at the analytics, like there's a lot more people that will share the work versus click the links and take the you know, sign the petitions and donate and do stuff like that. So like for me, it's sort of figuring out that doing more of that sort of research. But I do know it does help because like, I don't know if you guys heard the news, but Matthew Rushin's being pardoned. So he's the 22-year-old autistic Black man that was put in prison for 10 years, well, 50 years, but serving 10 for an accident, a car accident, a non-fatal car accident. So I posted something in coordination with his family and friends. I posted something a few weeks ago. There was a lot of racist comments, but at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people did sign the petition. And so like, you know, that turned out to be a good issue. Like that turned out to be a good thing, despite the racist, hateful comments. Like, I think for me, it's important to still push that tool because it could lead to a lot of good results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does a lot of sense. I want to come back to what you've been talking about taking how the work can inspire people to take actual actions. So we'll come back to that in a second. But Christopher, how about yourself? What is that for your work? What has this relationship been like for you?
Well, personally, I feel social media and I guess Instagram in particular is mostly a tool and a way to send a message. There's all types of people sending their messages and like who is sending the message, what's the intention of the messenger, what audience are you trying to reach out to? And I feel like personally, like I mentioned before, just trying to give this story of the South. And a lot of people connect that to an experience of the past, but still trying to make the point that these issues are still relevant to today. And so, yeah, just trying to figure out how to maneuver that platform. I get mixed emotions all the time, like people that celebrate the work, people that want to comment and debate the work, which I'm more than happy to do. Come at me anytime. And
You are happy to debate the work?
yes, yes.
You get in the comments to debate?
Yeah, well, not in the
All right.
comments. Like
All right,
sometimes
okay.
it'll transform into like a DM. We can
Yeah, you take it to the DM. We
more,
put hands in the DM.
yeah, people might try to like boast a little bit in the comments section and try to be something that they're not, but then you get another side of them in the DMs. And so yeah, it just gives me a further chance to dive deeper into my story and to relieve anxiety. But like I mentioned before, like what is the audience that we're trying to speak to? I'm trying to speak to Black empowerment, and I'm trying to find that weak spot within the Bible Belt, the racist part of it, and just turn those gears as tight as I can until they pop. And yeah, just like playing off of a specific storyline and figuring out how deep that rabbit hole goes. And Instagram just happens to be one of those platforms, and I'm sure it's probably the main reason why we're all here today, to be honest.
I mean, I think it's the platform, but I also think it's probably because of how so much of the world has changed in the last year. Because I don't really feel, we've been in this space for a long time, and you have evolved from, you do your work, it's in a gallery, or you do your work, it's in a magazine, you do your work, it's in a wall, you do your work as part of something, and then people come to it or buy it and experience it in some 1 to 3 different ways. But then suddenly we removed all of that. And I think Sydney, you brought that up earlier about since because of the pandemic, suddenly we're all forced to sort of stop and use the tools around us to connect to the outside world. And I think that I'm just, what my observations have been is I've just been exposed to so much new work, so many new artists during this time because of the fact that I've just been, a lot more focused and inside and having these digital tools to in my hand at all times, So I've been being exposed to new people and new work, and it's been an amazing time. I have seen that whole section below the comments just sort of be a place for just really horrible commentary, but also I've seen I also look at it as it's just like that's really where the mirror is in this society. It's like is in that comment section. I mean, I think there's bots and trolls and just like people that are that whole sort of faction, but I think that it's been an opportunity for us all to see how people think and how they speak and what their point of view is on the work that you're doing.
It really shows how much the U.S. education department has failed us. Mm-hmm. That's what I see. Like outside of like the hate and the crazy comments, they're horribly written. They can't answer direct questions. They don't know what comprehension means. Mm-hmm. Like if this time, if nothing else, showed the world how dumb too many of us are. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, definitely. Like, and then the crazy thing is, it's also the best time to be dumb because you're like a superstar out here if you're dumb. You know what I'm saying? You're mad if you got some wit about you. You angry. We're angry. But if you dumb, you don't know what the difference is anyway. You just, happy that somebody is responding to you, even though the English is terrible. Oh my God. Just reading them. It's like, did you read what you just typed out? Like, but it really just told you like what an epic failure, like this country has just dug its education system just below the ground to the core. Just dumb.
Yeah, and I think that's it. That's the mirror back at this moment for us to get a real gauge, honest gauge of where we are, Hey, before we move on, I want to for the audience, folks have started to add a couple of things into the chat, and then there's some questions. There's a Q&A section, which we're going to get to in about 20 minutes. So I would encourage anyone in the audience if you have any specific questions, please enter them here in the Q&A section. And then if there have been a couple of comments in the chat section, we got a pro tip here from Crash Barbosa to the panelists. He says, pro tip, turn comments off for people you don't follow. So there's, and which I guess it would be helpful if you pay attention to those comments and they get into, affect you psychologically one way or the other. All right, so let's move. I want to move on to another part here around taking the work that you do um, putting it out into the universe with an understanding that it's going to elicit some sort of response, sometimes with intention, sometimes it's a bit vague and we'll see what happens. But like, as you mentioned, Shireen, with the work that you do and with the work that you all do, like I imagine there's always an intention, there's always a goal and a hope to get the audience to take some sort of action, right? Because it's really easy to, especially in this digital age, for people to, armchair activists, like, oh, somebody did the work and created this image that expresses how I feel. So if I just reshare it, I get to just go on about my day, right? Like there's a lot of people that operate that way. I think that there is like the hard part is to how do you convert the work, the messaging, the energy around it into actionable items. So Shireen, you mentioned in your work, the posts that you do, that it's connected to various things. Like, can you give us a little bit, can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so like I actually get a lot of messages asking me to do, pretty much on a daily basis, asking me to do a piece for this, a piece for that, a piece for this, like as if like my whole job is just to create this, which is not, this is not it. I'm not getting paid for any of the stuff I post on Instagram. It's just what I do in my free time. So unfortunately I can't do it for everything. What I do is I push causes that I'm connected to. So I'm connected to certain orgs or certain, organizing spaces that are sort of going through certain things. And a lot of times, it's proactive and sometimes it is reactive to certain things that are happening. So yeah, I try to push those, I draw those things and I push those out. I think like a lot of people think that that's it. And, and that's the part I want to try to like fight over, because like we all mentioned, art is a tool for us. Just like, when it came to like pushing people to vote, I created a piece that said organize, then vote, then organize, just to show like voting's also a tool. So I want to encourage like my followers to like see like all these things as tools for greater social change. Like art is a tool, using Instagram to like promote a cause or whatever is a tool. So voting is also a tool, and all these things are tools. And ultimately, the goal should be to build together so that we can utilize those tools more properly. And that's sort of my goal, is to continue to like build with other artists and activists to make sure I'm using my platform responsibly on social media, because I think like you need people to check you, and you need people to like read over your captions and your pieces just to make sure like that you're doing it right. You need to have like, we're not supposed to be like promoting this idea that we're all just in bubbles and individuals. Like we are part of different communities, and we need to like come together to create these things. And sort of when I'm posting things, it's not just for myself. Obviously drawing these things like helps me process my own emotions, but it's definitely not all about that. It's more like me feeling responsible to different sort of communities and causes, and kind of like working together on it, rather than seeing myself as just like an individual that just draws things and wants people to just share them. So I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, it makes a lot of sense. And Phil, how about yourself? I know that in your work you've worked with other campaigns, and some of the work you've done is connected to some of the other in real life programs that I would imagine are the way you go about getting people to take action through the work. But can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going back to social media, it almost gives people a pass oftentimes. We saw a lot of people recently who posted a black square and that was it, or like you said, just reshared something and thought, now I'm an activist, or now I've done my job, or now I've avoided the criticism that comes along with staying silent. But the reality is, like, the root word of activist is act, and you have to act. It can't, there needs to be action, it's not just go out and do what you think you need to be doing. It's listen to the other folks and see what they're asking for. Like we saw recently, a a lot of street signs changed and things painted in the streets and people posting these black squares. But when you look at what BLM or other organizers and organizations have asked for, those aren't on the list of things they're asking for. So if you want to be a good accomplice or ally, if you want to support the movement, I think it goes deeper than looking at what you can do on social media and looking at instead what you can actually do to get involved. But I do see a lot of people doing interesting stuff on social media, so I don't want to completely discredit it, especially being somebody who's like a little older now, and seeing how younger folks are using it to mobilize and to create actions that actually lead to change. But I think it's a starting point, and that's all it really needs to be. And like I've seen recently, a lot of folks, like artists, creating work that, like a buddy of mine, Nathan Bell, made a shirt that said "Vote." Just going back to what you guys had said, and he had, and then the shirt was something that goes out and lives in the world and creates conversations as you're walking around. But he's also sharing it on social media, and that's creating sales and getting other people to buy it and getting other people to see it and talk about it. So I think it can be a tool if it's tied to something that's like real world, real life action. I just think it needs to be something deeper and more than that. And we need to stop setting the bar so low for folks who think that just sharing something is good enough. And I mean, one thing that I think about a lot is if you live in a world where you have the ability to be an activist, it's your responsibility to be an activist. If you have the ability and the privilege to stand up and be a voice and fight for others, you need to be doing it. And as soon as you zoom out a little bit more, and I say this as a white straight American man with a lot of privilege, that as you start to zoom out, you start to realize your own privilege. And having an American passport is extremely privileged. Living in a place
Not
where
right.
there's what's that?
Not right now.
Hey, I mean, trust me, right now. I know a lot of folks who are here undocumented and scared, and I know a lot of folks who are in other places and under attack and having their land
Oh,
stolen, rights stolen, and
can't go nowhere because
yeah,
we the
I mean, yeah, it's demobilizing at the moment to have an American passport, certainly, and it's certainly not the best one, but it's certainly not the worst either.
It's
So
definitely not the worst. That is
yeah,
100%.
I mean, we live in a time when nations are prisons and we're trapped by these arbitrary borders created by a bunch of white people in the past. And now that, since France first made their first border, I mean, up until now, there's borders and they're damaging and they're hurtful and they're, demobilizing. And so I think, as we move forward, the main thing is to, just to go back to what I was saying is that I think when you look at social media, you need to use social media to just highlight the actual actions you're doing, not to just be, getting away from the criticisms or feel as though or think as though that it's doing something when it's actually not. And certainly not to anybody on this panel, but there's a lot of folks that I see, and especially like a lot of white people in my circle who think that they've done the work because they've shared a couple things or they stood in the streets holding a sign. And a lot of times those things end up being more harm than good. They're posting photos or videos at a protest of a bunch of people who are there undocumented and who the police are building cases against and extrajudicial cases against. And so as we step into these spaces and take on work as activists, I think we just always need to be really mindful of other people and the harm we can do in the things that we do and the actual impact of the things we do, and ask ourselves, is sharing a black square and that's it good enough? And for me, the answer is generally no.
The answer is definitely no. I mean, it's like it's no. The answer is no, right? There is, and what I think that moment, and we all know with the black, everyone understands what we're referring to here. This blackout moment. I think that was another moment in this year that caused us what stood as the point where people could say, I'll do the absolute minimum, which is actually negative, or I can do, from that point, from sharing a black square to actually taking to the streets and putting pressure on local politicians to implement real change. In between that moment to actual power shifts happening, what are the ways that people can get involved? I think that helped, become obvious to many people. And I think that some people have been able to participate. And you mentioned Nathan Bell's shirt. I bought that shirt. I live all the way in Vermont, and Nathan's from here in LA, and I saw it. I picked it up, and I also shared it. and I was aware that, purchasing that was going to go to the cause or the causes, Christopher, I want to pivot to you on this, as a way of getting people to take action. I understand you did a print and for BLM that raised over $10,000. Is that correct? To that effect. And so the idea that people could support art or support the movement through art, purchasing art, that transaction, that is also a way to get involved as well, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just me by all means, just like making these prints and deciding I wanted to raise this money. I felt like I can't speak to LA, Detroit, Chicago, but here in Oakland, we really showed out, and it was really beautiful. It was almost like a melting pot of this movement, and everybody was doing their part, and I was just the visual element of it. There was people who was delivering food, like making sure people were fed, and then like I was doing my part making visuals, and then eventually those visuals would show up in protests, and then before you know it, like you see those signs, you incorporate the music, the dance, the experience of it, and before you know, it's like a performance piece in itself. And it's just like this larger melting pot. And I feel like social media definitely played a big part in that with amplifying it. And with so many people on their phones at the time that we were able to, I feel like we wouldn't have hit those numbers if it was like any other time. And so, yeah, I feel like as if social media did definitely amplify what was going on with the prints and giving us a way to raise money for this movement, but also wanting to give praise to other people behind the scenes that maybe aren't as don't have as much clout, I guess, as the artists that give and package these images for the people. Like it's multiple gears that are turning, and we're just one of many of those. So I just did my part, and I just feel blessed that other people resonated with that and want to support that as well.
Mm. Hey, I'm gonna pivot to another question here. I want to make just first let everybody know that our friends at Vans today launched a series of shoes with the MoMA, and specifically the artist and activist Faith Ringgold, who is best known for her narrative quilts. Her early work was inspired by the civil rights movement from a female perspective, later transforming into an exploration of African-style masks and painted political posters. Her work as an activist for feminist and anti-racism causes has influenced both communities inside and outside of the art world. And those shoes, I saw them today, are really, really cool. And I want to ask you guys, are there artists that you felt and are inspired by that you felt may have paved the way for you as an artist in your activism work? So specifically looking for, artists that were artivists that may have inspired you, motivated you early on.
Personally, oh, sorry, I just
go ahead, Chris, please. Yeah, please.
Jumped right in there. It was just like no question, but Emory Douglas definitely paved the way for myself, and it's awesome that him as an artist is amazing in itself, but I think we have to realize that the Black Panther Party had reached out to him and adopted him in creating these images that embodied this experience. And so just like that alone is amazing that it kind of worked in reverse. It's like the activism activated the artists, and amplifying his experiences and his voice, and just living off of that energy that's still here in Oakland, and just hoping to contribute my part to that is like that's what I'm about, And so yeah, Emory Douglas, he's got my vote. He's my inspiration. Yeah. Next.
Great. Sydney, how about yourself?
My inspiration, because I didn't start off as an activist first, I started off as an artist first, really comes from other current artists and like the collective that came out of Chicago, Afrocobra. But like B Mike is a huge inspiration, and he's based out of Louisiana, just to see all that he does. And and that's actually kind of what even activated my activist art even more. Like when I met him and we got to create together, and then I don't know, like just having Black conversations, really, it's supposed to activate you. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And again, like the art that I make, it might not say anything on it that has to do with activism, but its mere presence is really activating spaces. You know what I'm saying? Like I have a show up right now at U of M for the humanities department. It was a part of a residency, but it's not in the gallery like proper because it's pretty much all the buildings are shut down. So it's like a window display, but it's all of these Black women that's on the streets of Ann Arbor, which is super duper white. And I even have a painting of a woman breastfeeding her baby over a Zoom call. Like, if that's not activism, what are we even talking about here?
Amazing. Phil, how about yourself?
If I'm gonna go with one artist, I'm gonna go with Patrisse Cullors. She's my absolute favorite artist. Incredible activist and artist. Both should be in and will be in the history books for both of her work on both things in both channels. And obviously there's an intersection there and they all overlap. But yeah, I would implore everybody who doesn't know who she is to know who she is and ask yourself why you don't know who she is as well. So.
Thanks. Shireen?
So I have Palestinian roots, so I'm going to have to shout out a Palestinian artist. His name is Naji Ali, and I could type his name in the chat. But he's an amazing artist that I admired for a long time. Growing up, I always saw images of this character named Handala, which is a character of a young refugee boy, who's always had his back toward the audience, basically. And Naji Ali, basically said that this boy is going to have his back toward the audience until Palestine is free. So obviously he didn't get to live until then, but later, I really resonated with that as a kid because I was a child. Handala was also a child. And I remember seeing those images a lot when I was a kid. And so does probably every Palestinian that will recognize that symbol. But later on, I reconnected with him, seeing his art. Like when I was doing activism work around the issue, his art protested Israeli occupation and Arab dictatorships. And he was targeted and actually assassinated. And so learning that when I was older, the fact that Naji was targeted for his cartoons, it helped me realize just how powerful art and artists are for the push for social change. So yeah, he's definitely someone I admire and look up to. I recently made a nod to Handala in my Remember the Nakba piece back in May. There's an old man in the center who's supposed to be Handala as an older man. So yeah, that's definitely someone who's really inspired me.
That's great. I think if we could, if you guys get a second here to maybe enter some of your answers in the chat for those who are on with us to learn about these folks, that'd be awesome. I think this is a really great, way for everyone to learn about others as well. If they may not have. All right, so we are.
Can I ask a question? I had a question for Shireen. Is there something that we can do as all the Americans watching, myself included, to better support the Palestinian struggle? I know, it's been in the conversation here in this country all the way back to Malcolm and before, linking the struggle between, Black Americans and Palestine. What can we do? Is there a cause you can point us to, a book you can tell us to read?
Sorry, I was expecting this question.
Right. It's a selfish question. I'm asking for myself. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to support. I think the main thing I would ask an American audience is to really hold our government accountable, because Israeli occupation of Palestinians wouldn't happen without U.S. funding. U.S. military funding to Israel, which is sustaining its apartheid system and occupation system, which is causing a lot of systemic issues we'd see we'd kind of like, we'd come together around, you know, police and army violence against Palestinian children and men and women and children, of course, and kind of affecting their whole day lives, and they're losing their land and their villages. And under Trump, the situation has got significantly worse. He cut funding to UNRWA, which is the UN institute that provides support to refugees and things like that. So I would say donate to UNRWA, and also like hold the US government accountable. Because I know Biden, while he seems like the lesser evil, and of course it's a relief in many ways that he had won, but I think like Biden also, along with most other US presidents, supports Israel, and sort of is committed to Israel's military funding. So I think like just kind of making sure to hold our representatives accountable is the main, like really a main ask.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally giving, I think, $3 to $4 billion a year to the IDF, and we need to, like, as we talk about defunding these police departments here, we need to be talking about defunding the IDF and any other regime that we're supporting that's killing folks and stealing their land anywhere in the world, because we're implicit as Americans. So thank you for that.
Thanks for asking that, Phil, and Shireen, thanks. So guys, I just want to make us aware of time. I know that we're just about hitting that point, and I want to turn this this section over to some of the questions that the audience has asked. We have time for a couple here. Mike Stalter says asked, now that we've survived sort of this crazy election cycle, what's the next big focus for everyone when there are so many important voices that need heard right now? Christopher, is that clear to you, that question?
So basically, what's the next step of activation right now?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out myself, to be honest. I'm just rolling with the punches, meditating, reflecting, and I'm not sure when that answer will come to me. But honestly, I'm just kind of just going with the flow right now. I haven't had like a next plan of action just yet. But yeah, maybe if somebody else has something that they're like concrete working on. But personally, I'm just like internalizing and trying to figure out like what is the actual next move.
How about yourself, Sydney?
I'm pretty much in the same kind of space, because we're not out of the clear yet. Homeboy won't even concede. Like, we might be very well be entering into a very dangerous territory right now. So the art of it, I'm thinking like the actuality of it, like it might get real dirty. So
interesting. I think you're right. I mean, it's like such a like crazy time, right? Like last weekend, it's crazy. It's such a weird, everything is such a, it's hard to feel like you want to I don't know, celebrate to some degree or another. I personally was like, I feel like I want to celebrate, and many people all over the country did, and it felt like a moment. I mean, the work that all of us, I'm sure, one way or the other, but I've been working on this stuff for many, many years, and there was that moment on this past Saturday where it felt like we had done something, and then to immediately be followed by, well, just hold on a second. We have, 71 days, 70 days and a lot can happen from.
And he's already fired his defense secretary? Who did he fire?
Yeah, right.
Fired the crazy person?
Right. But which is also, regardless of, I mean, I think it's, regardless of who is in control and in power, I think that there's also that moment for activists, the realization for activists, artists to say, regardless, the work doesn't end, like you still have to continue to do the work. So we don't get that luxury, I suppose, as we take this position to really stop. I mean, I think that to Christopher's point, you may stop and pause and reflect, but the work continues. Yeah. I think.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, as you were.
I was just going to say that I think that, I mean, we, especially as a white guy, we got to acknowledge that, with great power comes great responsibility. And, you have a lot more power in this world if you're a white man, and you need to hold space. You need to bring other people to the spaces that you're in. And I find myself very often in all white spaces where it's my job and my duty to give up my seat, give up my voice, give up my place, or at least bring somebody along with me who doesn't look like me. And I find myself in all male spaces often. I find myself in predominantly male spaces often. We're in a space right now where there's 3 men and 2 women, and it's not uncommon, you know. And I think it's, you know, my responsibility to be sure that I give up my seat for those folks often, and use my voice to amplify their voice, and do everything I can to be sure that other people are heard, because otherwise, you know, there's no other way, you know, there's no other way. And the only way for power to be diversified is for people like me to get the fuck out of the way. Excuse my French, but
Well said. Well said. We'll take the French. Shireen, let me send that over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sydney. Like, you know, we don't know what's going to happen next. It's a very uncertain time, I would say. But like, say, you know, there isn't a coup, and you know, Biden starts in January. I think like the focus for me would be continuing to push him on issues like defunding the police, and making sure that ICE is abolished, to be honest, and a few other key issues like Palestine, of course, for me is front and center, because it's, you know, it's important to my people, but also to Americans, because that money could be used to fund our healthcare and our education system and everything else that we need here. So sort of, I'm going to be pushing for those things. But yeah, in the meantime, I think like the focus is just making sure everyone's okay. We're in a pandemic, we're in a crazy time. You know, just checking in and supporting one another, I think is very important right now.
Guys, folks, we've unfortunately run out of time. We've gone over, and I think that actually this might be a good segue into this quote from Toni Morrison, who said, "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language, you create art. This is how civilizations heal." And I think that this has been an amazing conversation today about that the work that is required in that healing process. And thank you all for sharing your stories with us, and how your art and activism come together and make this world a better place. And so we thank you very much on behalf of our friends at Nordstrom's and Vans for taking the time today. Thanks to all who have joined the conversation today and entered comments in the chat. There's a bunch of references there if you guys would like to take a look. Thanks, Christopher, Sydney, Phil, Shireen. Everybody's social handles are on the thing, so if you want to follow their work and learn more about them and the work they do, please follow them on social. So thank you all very much. Again, we appreciate you very much. I'll turn it over to Kimmy.
Oh, sorry, guys. I didn't know I was going with, I just want to thank all of you again for being here and just being a voice in the world right now. And yeah, we really want to thank you guys. We left some comments below where you guys mentioned your artists. And again, all of your names were on the social. So just wanted to thank you, and everyone give you a round of applause. And again, have a great night, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. It's very nice to meet
Thank
you all.
you.
Thank you.
You too.
See you soon. Be well.